I worked for this family to be a personal assistant to one of the kids. They were paying me over 10 grand a month. And guess what I was doing?
Babysitting?
Yes, but he was ashamed to talk to girls. So I would go up and strike up the conversation, let him take over and walk away.
They call that pimping, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Retirement House Podcast.
The only podcast with over 450 years of collective wisdom and expertise.
We've lived so many lives over the years, in case the name of the show doesn't give it away. So this week, we're taking you on a trip down memory lane.
Yeah, we've lived through world wars, the civil rights movement, the start of the internet. We've lived through some of the best and worst economies in history. We've had children and grandchildren. We've fallen in and out of love. We've had massive failures and colossal wins and everything in between.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So if we may, allow us to take you through some memories and some life lessons from the journey of life.
There's reasons they say, listen to your elders. So without further ado, let's take it back to the mid-1900s.
Oh, God.
All right, gang. We have plenty of followers and listeners in their 20s and 30s. What are things you did in your 20s and 30s that you wish you had done differently? And what are some lessons you learned?
20s and 30s, I was going to go back to 13.
Okay. But when you were 13,
When I
I
was
was
13.
20 or 30.
Oh, you were, weren't you?
Yes.
You're an old rug.
Those are the best kind.
Well, I want to talk about, just briefly, when I was 13, I would advise anyone to never, ever run away from home. At all costs, try to live and get along with your family, because it's horrible out there on the road, homeless, and no money, on the periphery of becoming a thief. And once you steal, you become something else. So that is a part of my life that is scary, because I could have slid down the other side of the slippery slope, and I didn't.
We're lucky we still have you.
So I started at 13. Come on, 14.
I was lucky enough to really know what I wanted to do from a very, very early age. And I had an opportunity at 19 to go to New York and to realize my dream of being on the Broadway stage, of being off Broadway, of working on national television. And I just feel like I was so lucky. Here's what I would change. None of the wonderful things that I got to do for 3 years in New York, but what I would change was my attitude. I had had a rough, kind of traumatic early childhood of not being able to speak properly or well, and of really having a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And what I've learned in all the time since is that honey captures bees much faster than vinegar. I was lucky, and I got to work, and I had a wonderful time, but I wish that I had known how important it is to really love everybody and to really support just not myself, but everybody else.
In my 20s, I got married at a very young age. Therefore, I had children at a very young age. I was 22 when my first daughter was born, and I loved every moment of it. I was 24 when my next one was born, and 25 when my third one was born. And it was all right, because that's what women did in those days. All my friends got married that early. We all had children. And people would say to me, oh, my God, how do you manage? Well, what do you mean, how do I manage? That's what you do when you have 3 children. You do it. And I did it. And I loved every moment of it with nothing no money, and a husband that was gone 36 hours out of 48. He had for 4 years.
Wow.
So
How did you have so many kids?
that's why we had so many kids. I hate to tell you. I hadn't seen him. We were young. I hadn't seen him for 36 hours. He would come in the house. He could only be home for 12 hours before he had to be back at the hospital.
Did he ever
And
sleep?
I tried to make sure he didn't.
That's
That does
adorable.
not surprise me.
Talk about bone jumping. Oh, God.
That was kind of our early life.
Well, I was 29 when my first baby was born, and I had already gone to New York, really had a lot of success, and was thrilled to be married and to be. I thought being pregnant was the loveliest thing. I thought I was gorgeous pregnant. I loved maternity clothes. I loved childbirth. I loved being a mother. And my second son was born when I was 34, and I was home and didn't go back to work until they left for college. And I loved every single, I think it's the most creative thing you can do, to have kids and really raise them and really care about them.
And it was a simpler time, which made it nice. I mean, in the neighborhood, you could, leave your door unlocked. Your neighbors would watch for you. You could go down at night, go out someplace, even as a young child or a teenager or something, and not worried about getting shot. I mean, today's society is just, it's scary. When I was in my mid-20s, I was kind of brave. I drove up by myself from Massachusetts to California for my career. The only person I knew was my brother-in-law's sister in South Pasadena. Stayed with her, moved into an apartment house, and then they sold it. Rent went up too high, moved somewhere else, thought I had a place to go, ready to go. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not going to take you in. So I'm like, oh, shoot. But where am I going to go? Found a place, and I've been there since 1980.
Wow.
Staying there. The rent doesn't go up too bad. And I was doing stand-up comedy. And the tough part for me was believing I was good enough. You want a dream to be like, I want to be on Johnny Carson. You had to do clean stuff. And you'd have to perform last at 1 o'clock in the morning and then get up and keep day jobs. I didn't believe in myself enough, so I said, I'm not going to be a starving artist. I've got to take a job, day job in the bank or whatever. I met wonderful people. Her name was Alice. She was my angel, they call her. So if I had trouble in the bank, I'd say, is this okay? Oh, he's okay. And they took me in. And I've been very blessed that way with people taking me into their family. So I made it through my 30s. And it's still, I'm getting better at it today, having been cast in this show with such wonderful people and the groups I'm in. And I'm glad I went for it. And when I look back, I said, yeah, that was pretty damn brave by yourself. But again, it wasn't that bad at the time. You didn't have to worry about getting shot or drugs or
I
being
didn't think it
homeless.
was bad at all.
No, it was good,
mean,
except it was
depends
tough
on who
being
you are.
alone. Being around family. Family's a big thing for us. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, my family's 3,000 miles away. But then I picked up new families, which is wonderful.
During my upbringing, if you will, in those years, like I said earlier, I was a runaway. I was introduced to things like my family didn't talk to me about the birds and the bees. So the first thing out on the highway hitchhiking, I got to Atlanta at 3 a.m, and these gay guys, I didn't know what they were. And I didn't know what they wanted. No idea. And I'm 13. I don't know nothing. That's another thing that this sex education thing, it needs to happen. I'm not saying go overboard with it, but you need to tell your children something so that, I knew nothing.
I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I hear that all the time, and it's true. Back in those days, no one knew anything. No one admitted anything.
Yours didn't talk to you?
No.
I was just asking you.
My parents talked to
No.
me.
They talked to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because how about you?
Well, starting a little earlier, when I was maybe in kindergarten, I lived next to a naval unit. And I used to hang out before kindergarten with the sailors at the gate shack.
Oh, God.
And so I think by first grade, I knew an awful lot, and I had seen an awful lot.
Oh, God.
And went to public school for kindergarten. First grade, I was listening to the nuns, and then at recess, I'd go out and tell the kids, "Oh no, this is how it works." And I got the snot beat out of me several times.
God.
And then the nuns gave me to the kids, and then they beat me up.
Oh, wow. Well, since we're on the topic of sex, where is the weirdest place that you ever had sex?
Wow, that
Are
didn't
you
take
talking
long
to
to get to that.
Galen? I want to hear where it was. Your most outrageous place.
Oh, I had 3. I'm at a party like this in Hawaii, and everybody's sitting around, and we are all just talking. And I don't smoke weed, so everybody's smoking weed, getting high. And back then, the big tail dresses and the can slips were in. And so I'm sitting there, and suddenly, I thought he was my friend, but his girlfriend comes and sits down on my lap with that can slip. And she sat there and laughed and made it happen. Right in a circle.
A lap dance?
Right in a circle, a real sex act. I couldn't believe it.
That's not a weird place.
In front of everybody sitting there and nobody knows.
Honey, you didn't know about the 60s, clearly.
Yeah.
That was not a weird place.
Oh, excuse me. Educate me now. Come on.
They would have parties where women got in free.
Yeah.
Men had to pay $40, $50.
What?
Where were you
really
people? Not in Hollywood.
I wasn't in Hollywood. I didn't
Yeah.
This sounds like Japan.
No. I was perfectly sober.
Yeah.
And you went in.
This is not a strange place.
Oh, so what was
The question was, where is the strangest place?
Yeah, the weirdest place to have.
The
Yeah.
weirdest
Yeah.
place.
Okay.
So in a room full of other naked people, that's not the weirdest place.
Oh, no, these weren't naked.
No, I'm talking about
Oh,
Naked
Oh,
people.
wait, you were.
where you were.
Yeah.
Everybody was naked.
And paying $450.
And
No, 40 to 50.
No, I was too stupid to get paid for it.
you liked it so much, you just gave it away for free.
No, it was Hollywood in the 60s.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, wish I was here earlier then.
I lived in Cleveland. Nothing like that went on here.
Yeah, my small town,
Might
nothing
be
at all
getting
like
around to Cleveland just about now.
that.
And my next place, now, this is not weird. It was on an airplane.
Well, that's the Mile High Club.
Club.
Everybody's
Yeah.
done that.
Okay.
No, not everybody.
No, not everybody.
Not yet.
So anyway, let me get my 20s and 30s out of the way.
Okay.
So by the time I got to the 20s, I had lived through the 60s. And that means drugs, sex, and rock and roll.
See, I'm not the only one.
And that's I was born and
Woodstock?
raised in San Francisco. Which what?
Woodstock.
Woodstock. No, but my wife went to Woodstock. Of course, I didn't meet her for another 40 years or something. But but the 60s were a very interesting time in San Francisco. From 65 on, I was on. On everything, in everything, just you name it, I was there, except the needle.
If you're going to San
And-
Francisco.
You know how much we hate that song?
The flower children.
But there were, flower children came in handy, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I took in my quota of runaways at the house, and, it was
you
quite
had a
interesting.
house.
Huh?
You had a house.
Well, we had one floor of the house, and we
commune.
got away. Both my parents were working, so I pretty much the run of that. And I lived in a forest. So, we got away with murder, and there was a great camper outside that was my brother's, and that came in handy.
Your parents were hippies.
No,
I like
no.
hippie
My
parents.
mom ran the Prado Pup Stand at Playland, and my dad was a Marine lookout, so he was doing that. That was the '60s. We played music. We had all nighters. We'd get a hotel room for my folks for 3 days and have a party. And that way we could have everything painted and plastered by the time they got back. And we had a wild time there at Land's End in San Francisco. And then I went through a big breakup, and I didn't know what to do at 20 when you have a broken heart. That was my first real one. So I left my volunteer job at the VA hospital, and that was my contribution to the Vietnam War. I was a full-time, not a full-time, but I was a volunteer at the VA hospital in San Francisco. And I took off with 2 other friends. We went to South America and got into a whole hell of a lot of trouble in South America and in the West Indies. By the time I got back to that, the Fern Bar had started in San Francisco, Henry Africa's and several others. So I had a lot of experience in the restaurant business. Friends of mine were opening up. I got back into that, got into bartending, in bartending. When you're not bartending, you're at all your friends who are bartenders' places. So there was a long experience of that, and everything that went along with crazy bars in San Francisco in that was the 70s by then. I went through that full throttle. And by the time I was 28, I had my first marriage. By the time I was 30, I was in rehab and divorced. And then from there on out, I started my life, really, with my eyes wide open, because they hadn't been open for 20 years, really. They were open, but looking at the wrong direction. Yeah, and then I'm to my 40, in my late 30s by then, so...
And ladies and gentlemen, we are not advocating
No.
that this should be
No.
the way you live your life. And actually, we're the fortunate ones.
Yeah, oh,
We
absolutely.
survived. We're alive. We've gone on to do things that we never thought we'd do. We've gone on to live our dreams.
We're still here.
We're
Yeah.
still here.
We're
I
still
want
here.
the T-shirt that
Yeah.
says, I survived the 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the 1980s were, woo.
Between Vietnam and the streets, I probably lost half of my high school class.
Ooh.
And, it was, it was a lot of fun.
What were some of the other major world events that happened? Because I was going to say Vietnam in
yeah.
the streets, but
Yeah.
In the 60s, the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, no,
I met John Kennedy.
oh,
How old were you?
I was maybe 21, and I was in New York, and I was modeling. And because I was a Conover model, we had been invited to be the hostess of a meeting for mental illness, a big fundraiser. They had a lot of pretty girls as the ushers and all of that. And I was standing in the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, and a man came walking in with a dark-haired woman, and she went to check her coat, and he looked at me standing in the middle of the ballroom and came straight over to me and started talking. What was my name? How did I get to New York? Was I having a good time? Was I being safe and staying away from drugs? Blah, blah, blah. He was the most charismatic person I had ever met. And as she came back and was obviously waiting for him on the edge of the ballroom, and when he glanced over and saw that, he said, so wonderful to meet you. Have a good and safe time in New York. And he turned and walked away, and every Conover model in the room came running over to me and said, do you know who that was? Do you know who that was? And I said, no. And they said, that was Senator John F. Kennedy, and he's going to be the next president of the United States.
Well,
Yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then I went to Europe, sort of. I was in love, and I went to Europe, and I got married in Basel, Switzerland, and we lived there for 3 years. I have a totally different type of idea of the 60s. It was like meeting Buckminster Fuller, meeting Tim Leary, meeting Ram Dass, Dick Alpert.
None of these people are listening have any idea who these people are.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because they all wrote books. They all had extraordinary lives, and it might be worth your time to go to the library and find out who these people are.
Or the
Because
internet.
deeply, or the internet, of course. There are no more libraries. Yeah, because they deeply influenced my life. And I feel so privileged to have had that kind of guidance.
A library is kind of like a bookstore where you don't have to pay for the books.
Yeah.
Just to remind you,
Yeah.
young people.
But
And-
speaking of life experiences and meeting people, does anyone else have anybody they'd like to share that they spent time or learned with or even read their books?
The only person I could talk about back then was my mother. My mother had a method of teaching me, life lessons, and she used old adages. And I remember when I was a young whippersnapper, she said to me when I was arguing with one of my friends that I didn't particularly like at the time over a toy, she said to me, son, and he was telling me things that she thought was right. And I was disagreeing with him. And she said, son, you're going to have to learn how to eat the fish and spit out the bones. I had no idea what she was talking about. But later in life, I came to understand that she was, just teaching a life lesson through that old adage. There were others whereby she would teach,
What is that lesson? What is that lesson?
The lesson of that was, look, take the good from someone you don't even like. Get rid of the bad. And then later she taught me, son, we are believers. We are Christians. You can even learn something from an agnostic. Don't just, and I got it. That was the most beautiful thing. And what a mechanism it was. It carried me throughout a lot of my life. I learned to really, truly eat the fish and spit out the bones. I didn't want to be the kind of person that listened to a little bit of what you said and decided that you don't agree with me, so I don't want to hear what you got to say. I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be a person who could take from all ethnicities, all people, a little something, you see? And I would advise the 30-year-olds today, there's so much disinformation out there that you can move away from the truth through disinformation. There's an organization called QAnon, I believe it is, who put out this wild story about how they were raising babies to get the blood to make them look younger. Older people were, and what's her name? The Clinton lady was involved in it. And people were believing this. They were buying this stuff, eating it up. So something has to be grounded in fact before you can just run with it. You can't just, and we're susceptible to running with stuff because we feel uncomfortable, we feel insecure, and we feel the need to be in control. So we land on something and it doesn't even have to be right.
So don't look at everything and say, oh, that's all truth or that's
Right.
all lies.
Yeah.
You know the difference. I was going to say, Monterey, you look like you were going to say something.
Well, no, it just reminds me of they used to say, don't believe everything you read. Well, that includes the internet.
Yeah,
And
well,
just because-
Right. It certainly
Right.
includes the
So
internet.
nowadays we have the internet, and there's some crap on there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember in our day, I think it was the 70s there, I had those big cell phones
Oh yeah.
And the computers came out when?
The cell
maybe?
phone
We
came
didn't
out
have
in a,
cell
in
phones
a,
then.
they
In
they
the
came out
70s?
in a briefcase. Yeah, the first
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
were
In a
briefcase.
briefcase, you could take out this big phone.
Yeah.
Phone book.
In 19...
They had car phones
Yeah.
Car
in the
phones.
60s.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. I remember
And then
the car
by the
phones then.
70s, I was doing extra casting at the time, and I had to go to a sticky phone booth 3:00 in the morning to try to replace extras. And I said, I will never do this again. And I bought a cell phone. Couldn't afford it. Cost as much as my car, it felt like.
Yeah.
And
Was
we
probably
had,
the
we
same.
had cell phones.
When did computers come out? Like 80s, maybe?
Oh,
The
No,
first
they were
big
Later.
computers?
No, they were no. Well, you could buy like a Texas Instrument. You could even build it at home, and
Didn't know
that
you could
was
build
But the
it.
Commodore
could.
64.
not me.
Oh, okay, when was that?
The Commodore 64.
Was that
yeah,
80s?
yeah.
That
no,
was
that was the late 70s.
70s, yeah.
When did you see your first television?
Oh, my first television was back in the 50s, black
Okay.
and white.
Yeah, my family had money, so people in the neighborhood
Oh,
would come
that's
over,
right.
and I have privilege.
We get, we
The people would come over to our house, and we would watch television. I thought everyone had TV until I realized no, they were coming down, and we had this little tiny little box in the middle of this huge
Right.
console-looking
Yeah,
machine.
Yeah,
And all of us would just sit there and look at this little
Yeah.
tiny screen, and it was black and white, and it was fuzzy, but it was TV.
Yeah, and it was only like
Yeah, it was
three,
round, wasn't
three
it?
stations,
Yeah.
maybe?
usually, yeah,
Usually
ABC,
stations.
CBS, and
You-
NBC.
you could
Yeah.
watch Howdy Doody,
Yeah.
Ed Sullivan,
Bozo.
and that was it.
And you know how effective those things were back then? How much people believed them?
People still believe in television. They believe things are real. They're paying millions of dollars for a 1-minute commercial in the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's
easily.
what's made it real clear to me. People must believe this stuff because people are paying millions of dollars to tell them.
But
Yeah,
people
per
believe
minute.
more on that when they see it on the internet or hear it in social media than they do if they see it on television. Television's more like a movie and it's make believe.
Oh, so you're saying we've transitioned to the okay?
And most of what you see on the internet is not true.
Anybody can write anything on the internet
right,
that they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go onto your social media page. You can go on to just all kinds of places and write whatever you want. You have your own blog, your own podcast.
Yeah.
You know, you can be doing whatever you want to do. And
right.
it doesn't
Yeah.
make it true.
No, and we've got nowadays TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and it's wonderful. Keep watching us. But I say to some of the younger people, get a life.
Yeah.
Go out.
Yes.
Don't text someone. Call someone. Go visit someone. Talk to someone as a human being. Not, oh, hi, how are you? I never got that. Some people take all the time to type rather than pick up a phone. Hello. And talk to the person.
Or
Well-
emojis.
If you can emoji.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
it's not even texting. Now it's smile.
Right. I don't know what half the emojis mean. So what did you just say to me? I don't know.
I'll give you one better than that. I worked for this family to be a personal assistant to one of the kids. They were paying me over 10 grand a month. And guess what I was doing?
Babysitting?
Yes, but he was ashamed to talk to girls. So I would go up and strike up the conversation and then let him take over and walk away.
They call that pimping, I think.
I had the same feeling when I heard that. Yeah.
Well, no. It was,
Well, you got $10,000 for it, so it's called
Pimping.
Well, the thing we're laughing about libraries, I would also like to say on behalf of the internet, if you're a writer, for God's sakes, go on and read real writers. Read Faulkner. Read Ken Kesey, who wrote in about 3 different dimensions all the time
At once.
at once. Yeah.
well, you know what?
Yeah, go if you're interested in politics, read about Abraham Lincoln. You know, if you're interested in singing, find someone that really can sing. Use
Yes.
the internet instead of letting the internet use you. How's that for a motto?
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Well, they claim that there's a new style of writing now.
Oh yeah, the AI writing.
Yeah.
Yes, I know
So,
that.
you know,
AI writing.
What's
Well,
AI writing?
I am one of the few people that thinks that AI has more sense than any of the humans have proven to this point, and maybe AI and humans together will help us. I hope so.
So we're talking about our artificial intelligence.
Right.
Yeah.
There's the key word.
Well, they're supposed to be
intelligence.
taking over, and we won't be necessary.
Well, that's up to us.
Oh yeah,
you know.
we're not necessary right now.
I'm
I
saying-
hope AI helps us to be necessary.
I think that young people have a way of figuring it out.
Yep.
Hopefully, they will always figure it out. It's always been said the new generation is going to hell in a handbasket, and they haven't made it yet.
Yeah,
what
I
is
agree
one
with you,
characteristic
Rita.
successful people have?
Money.
No.
Oh.
No, that's after they've. One thing that they have is they have this dogged determination not to give up. I'm going to see it through. I'm going to make it. And those are the kind of people that do it. And so young people looking at us, you see opinion, 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 opinion. Take some of this, that, and the other. And I don't want to tell you what you'll have when you mix it all together, but I mean, that's the way to discern things, to learn things, and not be too dogmatic about this life's journey is it's difficult enough. You can't
I love the fact that all of our background is so different and that we're able to work together week by week and really enjoy each other and really share and really
miss one another when we don't see each other for
and miss one another.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
have not killed Jerry once.
And young people,
We're only
I
in our
don't know what
first
they're
or
talking
second
about.
year.
I haven't missed any of them.
He
No, I'm
misses
joking, I'm
us
joking.
all the time.
Yes, he
Don't
does.
listen to him.
Oh, do you people work here? I'm
Yeah.
I say Jerry called me the other day. Don't let this fool you.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right.
I think maybe we think that way about the youth. At least I do, because all the news is bad. They only put the bad stuff up, not what good people do.
Yeah.
But there's so much of it. The homeless, the stupid politicians fighting Republican, Democrat. What about for the people?
Yeah.
Just wars and stupid things. Oh, we shot down a balloon from China. Oh, that's Biden's fault. Oh, this is Trump's fault. It just drives me crazy. That's why I'm scared about what this generation's going to end up.
But we have to get involved in politics.
Yeah.
Politics does not run itself. It's in this country, it's for the people and by the people. And we've got to get involved. The young people have got to understand. If you don't like it, go into politics and figure out how to change it.
Right.
If
Or
you-
at least vote, for God's sake.
or
Well,
at the
yeah.
very least vote.
That's the very least.
Work at the polls. They need poll workers every election.
I agree with your first statement. We need people for them to go in.
Yeah, we
They
need
want- 'cause
people,
voting,
good
you
people
still
in
get
office.
the choices you have is like, no.
But
you
be-
like it, you want
be
to make
the
a change?
solution.
Go in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me add my 15 cents here.
Time's up.
And don't. That's good. That's good. Don't just do something because you don't like it. If it's right and you don't like it, don't go trying to vote it out. Don't do that. I mean, that's what's wrong now. We have one party against the other party, and no matter what this party does, it's all wrong. Take a little bit from each party. Take a little bit from what's going on and say, hey, we can fix this.
I think you're underestimating the young people. I think most of them are involved and most of them are informed. And even if they're not super educated, they're partially educated to what's going on in this country and all over the world. And it's not fair to them to automatically think that they're not taking an interest in anything and everything. I think they are.
I don't think that's what we're doing. What I'm saying is this, and it's been going on since the beginning of time, how people pit themselves against each other. And these young people, no exception. You know what I'm saying? It's still going on today. That's what I'm addressing.
Well, you know something, I'm not sure I agree with you. When
Well,
we
it's-
went to
it's
the
an opinion.
when
You don't have to agree with me.
when we went to the Streamy Awards, I was
Oh,
really touched by the attitude of everybody that I saw there, the way they supported each other, the kind of creativity that they were doing. I was very touched by all of it. I thought, they're not shaming the fat girl in that velvet gown. They're not shaming any color of skin that I can see. They're not shaming gay people who are walking around holding hands. They are not streaming,
that's
they're not
because-
doing any of that.
That's because you'll go to jail if you do that. I mean, you can't do
No,
that.
it's not because you're going to jail. I think the young people of this
No,
country
you need
are
to get
wonderful.
around some more young people.
I love them. I really
That
do.
is not,
I agree
that
with
is
you.
not
Well,
a good sample of society.
I was one of those people that when they'd say, the children are the future, I'd say, "Pff." But now I look around and the children are the future.
They are.
The young
are our
people are
future.
the ones
they
that
are our future.
they will carry on long after we're gone.
Absolutely.
And
And
I-
hopefully better than we ever have.
Absolutely.
I think we've done well
Yeah.
because of the way we were raised by our folks, who were raised by other folks. And I tell that, each generation.
Yes, it
My
changes.
grand
Can't
nieces
look
are
at
great.
one and say they did so great. You have to, really.
So to change the subject,
Okay.
why do you think people are waiting so much longer to get married and have children if they're going to have children at all? Because today a lot of couples decide they don't want children.
The economy, what it costs to have a dwelling over your head, to have food in your cabinet, to even have bus fare, much less own a car. It is so expensive. My grandson pays more rent than I paid for my first house monthly. I mean, it's very expensive. Some kind of way, though, they're finding a way.
Yeah. Well, plus careers are more important now, I think, since
Well-
especially both parents are now, or both of the couple are in the workforce.
That I see.
Yeah, and so they're waiting longer.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's smart.
Yeah.
I believe in
Well,
ZPG.
okay, but what is the root cause of all of that?
Well,
I think it's misinformation again. I think it's like MAD, Ladies Against Drunk Drivers. There was an organization who got women to smoking. There's an organization who talks about, I don't want no man doing this. I don't want no man doing that. There's a whole lot of information. A lot of stuff goes into this stuff. A lot of stuff goes in there. Yeah, chauvinism played a part in it.
I like chauvinism.
But it
I like
played a-
men to open the door for me.
I'll take
Help me up and down the stairs.
things.
Just don't go overboard with it.
That's not chauvinism. What I'm talking about. No.
what, telling the woman that she can't have a career and has to stay home and have kids.
Yes.
But no woman today will listen to
No,
that.
I don't think so.
I don't
That's a
think
good
so
thing.
either.
Right, I agree with you. It's a good
and
thing.
I really don't
granddaughters.
think that I think that young people have a really great idea about not getting married when they're so young that they still have a wonderful time on their own, exploring, figuring out who they are. I don't think it has anything to do with they have more independence and they have more sense and they have more adventure.
My grandchildren, both of them are males. They're in their early 30s and late 20s. And they both know I can't support a family. It would be ridiculous for me to try to do this now. They want to get their acts together. They want to have real, true families and live happily ever after.
That's
Yeah.
simply very intelligent. That's just the best way to go.
Yep. My granddaughter has really made me understand that I knew from a very early age what I wanted to do, and boy, I went after it. And I don't have one regret, and I married too young, but I purposely held off on having children too young. And in those days, you were considered an old maid. I didn't give a hoot. I knew that I wanted adventure. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to travel. I think it's terribly important to not get married too early because you change a lot in your 20s and 30s. And then you're stuck with having the sadness of a divorce.
See, now that you hear that statement? That's part of what went into the change. You know what I'm
Children
talking
of
about?
divorce, yeah.
Yeah.
My son's one, and he and when he went to school, he met other children of divorce, and I think that was when he finally found a place to talk about it. And that is now part of the culture.
Snowballs.
It sure does, yeah.
Yes.
And so that shaped their values.
But divorce has always existed.
Yeah, but
But
I think more so in our day, and that the kids talk about it. They talked about it a lot.
And they can talk to people in Japan.
And they hear
And they
them.
can talk to
Yeah.
people
and
in
they
France.
hear their mothers and fathers
They can
arguing.
talk to people
and I've
in
heard many
Alaska.
kids conclude that I don't want to ever be married because of how their mothers and fathers argued in front of them.
Right.
That kind of got,
Well, there's a question that springs to mind, and at least 3 out of the 6 of us have grandchildren, and I don't know if they're
I'll shut up now.
in the Midwest, but one thing you have to remember is, and I've traveled across country and whatnot. The coast, living on the coast, we get spoiled because this doesn't necessarily represent the country, the West Coast or the East Coast.
You're right.
There's a different mentality, even though the numbers are getting greater on the coast than the Midwest and the middle of the country. There's still a difference in what they see as important.
A lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
What are some of the biggest-
Monterey,
Yes.
do you believe in aliens? I hate that it's on every card. I'm going to ask it.
Is it on
Finally, I'm
every
going to
card?
ask.
I
I
Do
believe
you
that there's
believe in
life elsewhere. Yes. I don't.
How's that?
I don't necessarily believe they're living amongst us. Of course, I don't
with
know.
An alien.
Oh,
In
God.
the '60s, I could say they did for
Yeah.
sure. They
Was
were
it
definitely.
fun?
Yeah.
Was it in a crowded room?
Out of this world.
Oh,
Is
God.
that sex with an alien? Are you talking about sex with an alien?
Is that one of your weird places?
Outer
okay.
space.
Okay. I could say I did that during the '60s.
Oh, did you?
You can
Probably.
say anything.
Oh, my God.
Anything could have happened in the '60s.
I had a lot of no-offs in the 60s.
No offs.
Yeah. Drunk in the bar at night, go home, wake up the next morning.
Oh, wanted to gnaw your arm off.
You
but
want to know your arm off because you looked over and she was so ugly.
It's called Coyote Ugly.
You know,
What's it called?
Coyote Ugly.
Oh. What about your UFO story, Galen?
Well, 1972, I was living in Hawaii and I was asleep, and my husband at that time was lying beside me, and suddenly I heard a voice in my head that said, "Please come outside." And so I got up and put on a dress and walked down a long hall to the door, put my feet in my loafers, stepped on the one step out onto the porch. The next minute it was 7:30. That was 4:30 in the morning. The next minute was 7:30 in the morning, and I was standing in the yard and I was looking up at an enormous spacecraft right over my house that was as big as my house.
Did you go with them?
I had already been with them apparently because I had lost 3 hours, and it took me years to figure out that I was one of the people that was being talked about when they talked about people who had lost hours on a spacecraft. The only thing I remember is that dress hanging up by a spacecraft door and a bunch of us that were only lights gathering around the table and looking at maps and listening to some information. And when I got back, I started yelling Larry's name, Larry, and no sound coming out of my mouth. And then when the sound started coming out of my mouth, the spacecraft was right over my house, and it was way, way, way up in the air. And when Larry came running out of the house, it had vanished. And our marriage wasn't doing so well anyway. So, it was like Thurber. You are a booby and you belong in a booby hatch. But my kids came out of the bedroom and Eric said to me, "Oh, Mommy, they always vanish when someone that doesn't believe in them
Comes out
of the house." That sounds like a pretty strange story, but that's not the strangest story to me.
Okay, wait a minute. Yeah, okay. I believe there's intelligent beings out there somewhere, whether they come in spacecrafts or not. But I think they're intelligent enough to see what's going on down here and saying, "Oh, hell no," and just go. Yeah.
Well, I think that you have a big enough crush on me to understand that if they're really intelligent beings, they would come to me first. Don't you?
No, definitely you first. Yeah.
Thank you.
They wouldn't come to me. I'm insane. They don't want.
Okay, a 1-minute story from everyone. Eugene, starting with you.
What scares you about the future of humanity? And my answer would be the way society is going today, still, I'm saying, because of homelessness, because of, my goodness, kids in school with rifles.
Oh.
How bad can it get?
That's pretty bad.
It's, I'm sure the majority of people are good. You don't hear about them, but I'm sorry, it's scary. If I had grandkids growing up, I've got great-grandnieces and stuff, and they go into school, and after that story, it's like, are they okay? Did they make it back? I couldn't think of being a parent. Your kids go to school and people are shooting.
And it's hitting all neighborhoods and coming from all kinds of homes, and it's just unreal.
Yeah, that's where I agree with Retha, with family values. Everything starts in the family. If parents would parent and children would be children not because they want to be, not because they're too dumb to be anything else, not because they're smarter than the parents. Children are smarter than their parents now. And there are people out there who think that they know more than doctors.
Your 1 minute is up.
I'm done.
Well, if parents were all as good as like when Bubby said, bring up your kid the right way, I don't think it would be quite as bad.
But I still, even if you bring up your kid the right way, there are an assortment of
influences,
crazies out there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And no matter what you do with them, how much love you give them, how much morality you try to instill in them, we're born crazy.
There is an even deeper meaning to that. Not only just train them in the good things, but learn what your child is leaning towards. Gayla knew at a very young age what she wanted to be when she grew up. She was allowed to be trained in that way when she was young, which prepared her. I knew as a child I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be on TV. And I'd been on TV on and off since the 70s. But I got my first television show in 2010, the Betty White Off the Rocker show. So I was trained up in the way I should go. And for most of my life, I have been enjoying what I do. I always say I have no regrets.
When I was young, I was pretty much a turnkey kid. In 5 and 6 years old, the world I could go out to, I'd hop on a bus, go from the beach in San Francisco 7 miles down to downtown and visit one of my siblings for lunch. And that's how the world was in those days.
The whole world was like that.
Well, yeah. Well,
Cleveland was
my
like
little
that,
corner of the
yeah.
world was. And but there's other places that people couldn't do that. And growing up that way, I was more and more reliant on myself for everything. And as far as, because we lived off the beaten path in the city, so our neighbors were quite a distance away. and through a deep forest. So that kept a lot of kids coming to my house when I was younger. But as we got older, they'd start coming. But I just built this self-reliance and trusting myself too, because I learned how mean kids were. So I stopped talking to most of them because anything serious, because they'd always turn on it. Somehow they'd leak a secret, or break that trust. And so in doing that and growing up like that, I was too self-reliant and didn't share things. So that eventually crashed in on me. And that's when I hit bottom. And that led to a lot of my abuses and whatnot because I had nowhere to share with. But once I turned that around and started sharing with other people and let people come into my life, that's when I started actually living a life and being a, what they call a contributor.
Retha, since it's not too tough, is there a meaning to life?
I believe that there is a meaning to life. Jerry and I agree on one other thing. We're both Christians. And I believe the meaning of life on this earth is training for life after death. You have free will, free choice. And I happen to believe that there is only one road to heaven. I believe there are lots of roads to happiness. Don't get me wrong. I think there were great teachers and prophets that have said wonderful things. But the Bible is the only book that says this is how you get to heaven. So I believe that's the meaning of life. Basic training before leaving Earth.
Bible. Yeah.
I think that we were all put here. I don't think that there's some great secret meaning to life. I think one thing we do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
The golden rule.
Is kind of how you can live happily in this world and you can allow other people to live happily. And that includes being able to take care of yourself through work and devotion and whatever else you need for that. Go.
Go me? Okay. Well, being a recovering Catholic, 9 years of nuns, I had plenty of that. I'm a spiritual person, and I do try to live by the golden rule. And I believe man has taken too many liberties with organized religion for my way of life and my way to the next life. The golden rule is good for me, and that's how I channel my life. And I don't try and put my beliefs on anyone else. Those are of the heart and the soul, and those are mine.
I guess I've had a lot of experiences, very, very unusual experiences in my life. But one of the most unusual is that I was in the back of a 1962 Ford Galaxy convertible, which, thank God, really thank God, had the top up when it went off of a cliff and fell about the equivalent of 5 stories. And it was caught between a tree and a rock. And about an hour before that, I had actually had an epiphany of just the magnificent hugeness of life. And I had said, thank you, dear God, if I die today, I've had it all. Since then, every single moment, just remember to be grateful.
Yeah.
It's the present, and that's why the present is a gift. And you don't know when you're going to get yanked off the stage, but just enjoy every moment of it. Do your best, love people, be kind, just do your best.
Right on.
to make your sense of this magnificent lesson that we're involved in.
Ditto what she said and what Bubby said, the golden rule. We used to say other sayings back then: make love, not war. Love thy neighbor. Be kind and understanding of everyone. And I think this world would be a better place.
We got to get involved. It's not enough to talk about golden rule and do this and do that. You got to get involved. You got to teach Christ. You got to teach what. See, you have to believe in something. You can't stand and say what other men did. See, man he's fallible. He's not infallible. So just because a preacher is caught in a motel, that's that preacher. He's fallible. That doesn't make the word fallible.
No, but it's the weirdest place that preacher has ever had sex.
Not necessarily. But what I'm saying is we need involvement. We don't need, these boundaries that we're setting here. We need to step out and say, that's what makes the world a better place.
Okay.
The mic.
There we go. Thank you all. Thank you for watching us.
Thank you for
Tune
watching.
in again. Retirement House. Take care of yourself. Love one another. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe.
That's easy for you to
Follow-
say.
Say it again.
Make sure to subscribe. After an hour like this, who can get the words out?